Good afternoon, everyone. This meeting is being held in compliance with the Open Public Meetings Act and is open to the media and the public. Notices were duly posted and the meeting was advertised in the Hunterdon County Democrat and Courier News. Formal action may be taken. Can I get a roll call?
Ms. Beverman.
Here.
Ms. Fiore.
Here.
Ms. Menzer.
Here.
Mr. Beach. Ms. Podgorski.
Here.
Ms. Ryan.
Here.
Ms. Wolf.
Here.
Dr. Social.
Here.
Ms. Sample.
Can we stand for the flag salute, please?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Dr. Hart, can we have our superintendent's report?
Thanks, Dr. Sisfield. 2 items for the superintendent's report tonight, and I'd like to start by introducing Mr. Tumalo to review the HIV self-assessment. This is an annual report that the board hears each July after the conclusion of the school year, and he'll provide you with some more details about our self-assessment that we eventually have to submit to the state. So, Mr. Tumalo, if you'll start us off.
Happy summer.
Happy summer.
So I'm gonna be, I'll just be pretty quick with this. If you have any questions, just let me know. So this is just, this is just our self-assessment from the year. So pretty much how this works is we meet as a committee with the school climate teams at each building. And at the end of the year, we go through a series of questions. And as a team, I really kind of just sit back. I don't really have much say. It's led by the school counselors, the principals are there, and we go through the criteria together and just kind of see where we're at. So that's what this presentation is going to be. Okay, so that, well, I kind of just did that already. So here's the process. So really, once the scores are complete, I under the supervision of the principal, I collect them, and then I compile the data to show you, present it to you, and then after this meeting, I will hit certify on the state website, so that's certified for the year. And then our official release of the grade report will be posted on the district website, but it's usually several months later once that report is done. So we usually do an unofficial document on the website until the official one is released by the state, and then we release it. So there are 8 core elements from the scoring rubric that we look through, and it covers programming, it covers training, in the policy, HIV policy for students and for staff. It covers instructional programs, curriculum and instruction, HIV personnel, and then the last couple sections are all about protocols and procedures for HIV reporting when we have an investigation. What does that look like? There are 26 indicators on the entire assessment. So it's scored from 0 to 3. 0 does not meet the requirements, and 3 is exceed requirements. So pretty much just so the highest possible score you can get is a 78. And just so you know, if all the scores were meeting the requirements, the score would be a 52. All right, so just to kind of give you that perspective. So here are our scores for each building. Three Bridges 78. White House 78, Hollenbrook scored as a 77, and then Reddington was 78, as out of a possible 78. Okay, so we usually do very well, exceeding in a lot of areas. So our strengths, we kind of identified some core strengths as a district, and we do, as a team, we really kind of, and it was very consistent across buildings as well. Identifying our strengths and where the areas we need to grow in. Core element 1 is the programming and approaches. We do that pretty well. We have really good programming. The area that we always seem to need a little bit more work in is the training, and specifically training with volunteers. Not training with staff, not training with students. It's more about the training with just the volunteers that are in the schools. They also need to be trained in HIV as well, and the policy. And that's something that we're going to work on for next year. We have an idea. The investigating procedures are really good, and the reporting is pretty strong as well. So again, some areas of focus for next year. Again, this is across the board in every building, is we would like to look at the school climate survey, New Jersey school climate survey, to collect some data, some student data, some teacher data. We did it a few years ago, got away from it. The state revamped it, and they were using a pilot. Dr. Hart and I are looking into that for next year. Right. Training and HIV policies with students. So that's always an area that we can grow in. We do pretty well, but again, it's something that we can definitely do better. Specifically in training the kids and teaching them the difference between conflict and bullying. What is the definition? What does it actually mean? And that's a common conversation that we have with staff and with the community as well. So we'll definitely focus more on that. And then again, like I said, the volunteers and contracted service providers. So one of the ideas that we're thinking is in the end of August, the HSA president has a meeting with all the volunteers at the beginning of the school year. So I'm thinking of tagging along and doing some sort of presentation on the HIV during that time, and that would cover a lot of volunteers in that way. So that's one thing that we're going to try to do this year. And then another area, again, is just that age-appropriate instruction on preventing HIV. That's always just a staple. That's something that's really just going to continue to be a goal for us, right? We could never, right? As long as we have bullying in schools, we still need to do this. So something new that I did in the presentation this year under the guidance of Dr. Hart is provided some history to kind of look at, all right, where are we with our data in terms of HIV investigations, in terms of conflict? What does it look like from year to year? So we went back to, and I provided this, I believe,
It's in the handout.
It's in the handout.
Yeah, your memo. It's one of the attachments.
Perfect. Yeah.
1.03.
So we went back to the 2017-2018 school year. And if you look, the way that it's kind of organized, it's organized by alleged HIVs, which is conflict, confirmed HIVs, the total cases of conflict, total cases of HIV, and then I added a column for principal discretion, which is new this year. So you'll see that up until this past school year, right, it's NA because we didn't have that in our policy, right? So we were investigating all of HIVs that were coming down our plate. So this year, we now have the principal discretion, which I just want to clarify that for a minute, that just because it's principal discretion doesn't mean that the investigation is not looked into or the situation is not looked into. So it's not like, oh, principal discretion, I don't want to deal with this. It is investigated, a report is written and handed to Dr. Hart and is reported out. It just doesn't raise to the level of HIV under the definition, right? So meaning they can look at a situation with the anti-bullying specialist and the principal together under the supervision of the principals and the people involved. They look into the situation and they find that, okay, there's no distinguishing characteristic here. It doesn't seem like there's really any substantial disruption. It just seems like a one-time incident with students having some conflict, right? Still addressed, there's still some kind of disciplinary action if needed. It just doesn't rise to HIV and to the level of investigation and the reporting, all of that. Does that make sense? So you'll see that our data kind of shows we kind of plateaued over the last two years or so after COVID. We're hovering around 9 investigations that happened throughout the school year. In 2021, 2022, we had 6 conflict and 3 confirmed. This past year, we had 5 conflict, 4 confirmed. And you'll also see that typically the investigations occur in the upper grades, right? In RMS and Hollenbrook, bigger students, bigger problems. That's typically what we see. So again, not that conflict isn't happening, right? Conflict is inevitable, it's gonna happen, right? So but we're teaching our students how to handle that appropriately. So I just wanted to, I thought this is something I'm gonna continue to do and just kind of track and see where we're at and, you know, what do we need to do? What do we need to do better, right? What are we doing well? The other thing is, and I've attended many HIV trainings, and they say that if we're not investigating any HIV potential bullying situations, we're not doing our jobs, right? It's going to happen. It is present. It's going to continue to happen, but it's our goal to do the best that we can to eliminate it as best we can. Okay. So I think I went over the timeline, right? We'll kind of post it once the report is done, and we have that. And then we'll get receive the state of assurances from the state once it's certified. That's all I have. Any questions?
I have a question.
Yeah, please.
So what does the state do with all this information that all the schools put into this portal? Is there any is there any assessment of all this data by the state?
It's a great question. I think that they do look at the data. I have never received anything from the state in terms of what they've done. I've gotten no notification in terms of if any feedback in terms of what we need to do better or improve upon. I've gotten no feedback. So I really don't have an answer for that. That's a great question though. Please, yeah. Yeah.
And I'm looking for it right now, Jody, to answer your question. I think there's a couple of things. One, I think this is statutorily driven. It's something that's written in the policy and statute that the district has to do annually to make sure that we keep ourselves accountable to do the appropriate training for staff. It's kind of like they give us a rubric, we assess ourselves on the rubric, and then we have to report to the state that we did that, and it's based in the statute that we have to do that. Secondly, there is a policy, and I'm going to search for it. I think there is a policy, a state policy about unsafe school choice options, and I think that our state numbers in terms of bullying and violence and vandalism, the old EBVRS or SSDS report that we do, the school safety data system, if there are indicators that rise to the level that signal to the state that there might be an unsafe school situation here, the state may have a response to that as well.
Okay, that's really what I was asking.
Yeah, I think that HIV is also part of the old SSD or the new SSDS report, which is where we track incidents of violence, vandalism, weapons in school, substance abuse in school. All of that is compiled by the state, and they monitor the data to see if state intervention is required at some point.
Got it, thank you.
You're welcome.
Can you just remind me the difference between conflict and bullying?
Yeah, so the definition by the state, that's what we go by, right? The definition, there's a criteria for something to be classified as bullying or harassment. And there's two main areas. There has to be a distinguishing characteristic, meaning something that you can't change in your, like it's something, maybe a special needs, maybe sexual orientation, maybe it's hair color. There's another section as well that would fall under distinguishing characteristic. So some kind of distinguishing characteristic could be race, even religion, that a comment or physical altercation is kind of connected to. The second part is there a substantial disruption to the school day? Meaning, is the child afraid to come to school? Is the child not riding the bus because they're afraid of being around someone? So is the child's class being switched because they don't want to be around this person that made this comment or persons? So we look in those two categories, and it has to fall under both to be considered an HIV finding. Conflict would be maybe there was a comment that was made, but the student said a comment back, right? Or wasn't fazed by it, but was like, yeah, that annoyed me, but didn't, I can still go to class and sit with him and go to lunch. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's all.
Sure. Thank you. Have a good night.
Thanks, Anthony.
Yeah, of course.
Appreciate it.
Appreciate it.
So the second item under the superintendent's report is this preschool education aid. It's a funding opportunity provided by the state. So I'm gonna, along with Jason and Stacy, the three of us are really the core team that have been looking into this recently, and this is how recent this is. The state sent out their call providing notice of this opportunity for funding shortly before I left for vacation, so somewhere around graduation, 20th or some odd of June. I returned from vacation last week on Monday, went to their technical assistance along with Jason and Stacy on Tuesday, talked to personnel on Wednesday that this opportunity is here, and you'll see later on in the deadlines, the application, which is a 30 to 40 page application, is due August 11th. And we have to have a program up and running January 1st. But it's really exciting, right? So what has us wanting to really do this is the exciting and extraordinary opportunity to provide preschool eventually for all of our students here in Reddington, all of the children here in Reddington. So this funding opportunity, and Jason and Stacy are here. I told them they didn't need to stand up here.
Oh yeah, no. By the way, he said, "Oh, Stace, maybe you want to have like part of this." I'm like, "Are you kidding me? You take the show."
She offered me to take the show.
We're Jason and I here, like we're the supporting team here.
When was the
Dr.
last
Hart has
time
this.
you've seen Stacy Beagle not steal a show at a board meeting? But let's answer that question. So really, with Stacy and Jason, really we're the core team, and we're thrilled to be able to be talking to you about this tonight. And what we're really looking for from you after this presentation tonight is essentially the green light that it's at least worth trying for the funding opportunity, and looking into this and doing some more research, because this is a great opportunity, but we want to talk with you about it, have a discussion about it now before we get too much further into the application and what's going to be involved in this.
And I think it's also important now, as we're meeting with different people, questions are coming up that we did not recognize and going, oh yeah, we need to look at that. So I think part of this is also, putting it out to you. asking questions, other things that we can also add to our agenda, like, oh yeah, we need to look at that, so.
And that even happened in the personnel committee meeting last week, and that happened in a meeting with the provider just yesterday that we met with, and we'll tell you a little bit about that as well. So to be clear, this is the availability of something called preschool education aid to increase access to high-quality preschool for 3 and 4-year-olds. I may use the term grant, you may hear the term grant. This actually isn't a grant. If we are awarded the funding, this funding comes in the form of additional state aid that is provided to the Board of Education for spending for preschool and preschool only. So what they'll do is we apply for the funding, let's call it $1 million. $1 million is added to our state aid for this year and for reapplication for the next 5 years. This is a 5-year opportunity for rolling out. So it's not a grant. In other words, I don't foresee, this is the asterisk, right? I don't foresee that this is grant funding that gets taken away like ESSER, right? That had a 3-year time limit. This is state aid that gets applied and will be applied every year until such time, right? Legislatures, governors change state aid formulas, right? So this is funding that's here for us to expand preschool. It's not a grant, it's a competitive funding opportunity. And it's additions to state aid. There is, however, a priority order in terms of how the funding is provided to districts. The priority order is Tier 1 districts, which have 20% or more of free and reduced lunch, then Tier 2 districts, which are anywhere between 15 to 19% of free and reduced lunch population. Tier 3, which is us, 10 to 14% free and reduced lunch, and then Tier 4. So we fall right in the middle, the higher end of the middle, probably one of the last districts that will be reviewed for the offer of funding, but there are things that we're baking into the application to move our application maybe higher in our tier to draw the attention of the state for this opportunity. So just know that that's how the funding is distributed and the awards are announced.
So quick question,
Yeah.
you mentioned 5 years, I don't know, so it will be available every year for 5 years, or we don't know that for sure?
That's the funding opportunity has been set aside is that it will be available because the expectation is that you expand, that you start in year 1 at some baseline and then expand over the course of the next 5 years to meet 90% of your universe. And I'll tell you what that means in just a moment. Real brief slide. There's research that says that high quality early education helps children be prepared for public school. Funding, we know across the country, is increasing for early childhood education. And then additionally, public preschool programs have a substantial impact on children's early learning and quality preschool education is a profitable investment. So those are some citations where there's research. And does this fit in our strategic work? And I really thought about that before putting together this presentation because I don't want you and the district administration to be running down a implementation of a program that maybe doesn't fit what we believe as a district. So I wanted to look at that, and I do believe that the creative curriculum, the play-based programs that we have for preschool are very inquiry-based. This will, and I'll show you, illustrate that with a slide in a moment, increase our partnerships in the community with daycares and other preschools and our local providers. And I think that preschool is really designed. If I were to ask any preschool teacher, preschool administrator, they would say that preschool is really designed for early socialization and collaborative skills that prepare kids for school. So I do see a connection with our strategic work. Yeah, Carolyn.
With our population, expected to expand or change, is there any issue if we go out of that 10 to 14% free and reduced lunch? If we go up or down, once we're approved, if we're no longer in the category, would that change our funding at all?
No, I don't think so. I think that funds the initial application. I think that's how initial funding is awarded in terms of priority. There are districts in Tier 1 and Tier 2, maybe a few even in Tier 3, that already have the funding. It's existed for a number of years. Stacey is an instrumental member of the team because in her previous district, they were awarded this. But it was a very different population.
Very different, yes.
So I think that this is initial application only. If we don't receive the funding this year, and then the ASSA, which is our October 15th student population count, reflects a different free and reduced population, one way or the other, that may influence an application for next year or the following year. So it's initial application, as far as I understand. And I'll say this, remember, I went to the technical assistance training last Tuesday with Jason and Stacy. We have a list of questions for the state that we've provided. We're getting questions. I will do my best to answer all of your questions and any questions from the public as well. But please understand the tight timeline here that this has been a week's worth of work, or only.
And then
Jason,
I'll just
please.
mention that the Q&A responses are not going to be back from the state for another week. They're getting all the Q&A from all the districts in the state, compiling them, then providing answers to all the districts. So we won't have that until about 10 to 12 days prior to the deadline to apply.
We weren't allowed to ask questions. Things we will talk about tonight, the requirements for the program, what mixed delivery models mean. Jason will review what we can bake into our budget, and then I'll tell you the timeline for application, and I just mentioned getting the program open. So the requirements first. So I mentioned, Justine, in your question that over a 5-year period, our initial application has to apply for year 1 worth of funding, but has to provide some room to accommodate 90% of our universe, and universe is defined as our preschool population. We have to have a program that can accommodate enrollment of our entire 90% of our universe, at the end of 5 years. Our universe is 266 students. They got that number by taking our first grade population of students according to the ASSA report from October of this past year, and they multiplied it by 2. 3-year-olds, 4-year-olds. So it's 1 grade level times 2 to accommodate both 3-year-olds. So it's like almost adding 2 new grade levels to Remington. That's 266 students. 90% of that is 240 students. So over the course of the application, and this application that we're working on right now, we have to outline what we're looking to do in year 1, and then how we're planning on expanding in year 2 through 5 to make sure that we have room for 240 students at the end of year 5. In order to be eligible to apply, you also have to be running full-day kindergarten programs, which we are. So this means we're eligible. Once we begin the program, and in the application, we have to identify the curriculum that we're going to use in the program. And this is something that Stacy, you can speak to, but we have to adopt a New Jersey approved curriculum. There are 4. We currently use the creative curriculum in the preschools that we have in our Three Bridges school right now. There are other curricular documents or curriculum programs that can be used if we choose to change, but I think we've been pleased with creative curriculum, and they have some other tools, assessment tools that go along with early childhood education that are very useful. We also would have to conduct 2 types of screenings within the first 30 days of entering students into our program. Developmental screenings, which there are tools out there where we can screen students with based off of developmental milestones, dressing, grooming skills, language skills, gross and fine motor skills, and then we would also have to have our nurse conduct health screenings, vision, hearing, height, weight,
Vision,
dental, and a dental screening. And this is really for engagement with families as well. So we conduct these screenings and we can send health information home to the families for follow-up with a primary care physician. The application has these requirements for curriculum, but we really do have to show an application that meets the elements of a high-quality preschool program set forth in administrative code. Stacy, is there anything you'd like to add to curriculum?
No, the developmental area of screening we're actually looking into. Part of the creative curriculum does have tools built in that we will expand on, but also working with other districts in Harding County to come up with another screening tool that we can implement. Basically no-brainer in terms of this component of the application.
This is probably the easiest part.
Absolutely,
Right?
yeah.
We're gonna get progressively more complicated here. Michelle, please.
You might get to this later, so feel free to table it, but if you do identify someone that's at risk, then what are the downstream consequences of that for the district?
So yes, so through that, we will have a second screener that will be identified to be able to move that student through another screening to determine if that child is eligible moving forward for special education or not.
Even
So it's
with-
almost, it would almost be almost like a tiered system in terms of getting the children in here. But also know that with preschool, some of our children come through us through early intervention so that they've already might have been identified as having some needs to be met. But we will have a two-tiered system in terms of screenings, and then if a child has a red flag, we will go to the next stage of another screening.
And it's important to know as well that although we don't run a universal preschool program, preschool for all, treating preschool like kindergarten, we are still obligated through the Pupil Services Department to do something called child find, which means if there are preschoolers in early intervention or out there, parents have concerns about how their child is developing, we have to find them, bring them into our district, conduct evaluations, and if eligible, offer a preschool program. So
Right, and
you know-
this is really nothing in addition to what we're already doing.
Right.
We have children that are coming in, we have red flags, we're already on it. But for this application, we do need to identify what it is we're going to do. So that's why we're addressing it right now. So we're actually putting it into a formal application. But any kiddo that comes through, we recognize and we follow through with any type of evaluation or screening that we need to do for our children.
any child aged 3 to 21 are the responsibility of the public school district to provide an education if they are found eligible for special education services. So even though we don't offer this preschool program, we've been finding 3 and 4-year-olds that may have developmental delays, and we've been providing services already, and we do that for our current preschools. So the things that we would need to implement through some of this funding, one is hiring of teachers. So hiring preschool teachers, the requirements of the grant are, I said grant, right? That's why I warned you. The requirements of the funding is 1 teacher and 1 paraprofessional dedicated to a class of no more than 15 students. So class size is capped at 15. We would need to hire a preschool coach, a preschool intervention specialist, and then a community liaison, a CPIS. All 3 of these positions can potentially be the same person. And they don't necessarily have to be a district employee. They don't have to be full-time. They could be a shared person through us in another district. It could be someone that we contract with through an educational services commission. In fact, those 3 jobs combined, or those 3 roles combined, probably would make up, based off of what I'm seeing in the application, 1 part-time, maybe potentially full-time position if you combine all 3 of those. So it's not 1 person per position. The same person can serve in those 3 roles. You have to also hire a nurse dedicated to the preschool program. In looking at the application, this is something when we talk about nursing services that we would look to probably provide one of our current nurses a stipend to oversee those screenings in preschool. Or we could contract out and share a nurse with an educational services commission to come in and evaluate our students in the preschool. But these are the required components that we have to speak to in the grant. And then we have to speak to briefly how we grow these things, right? If the program, year 1, yes, maybe we can offer our nurse a stipend in terms of assessing and doing screenings on our preschool students. But by year 5, a whole another 240 students, we might need to hire a nurse by that time. Jason, do you want to speak to facilities? There are some facilities requirements as well in terms of the classroom space.
The facilities are very similar to our existing facilities for kindergarten and preschool rooms. So you either need to have a bathroom in the classroom, or you need to, what we're doing this evening is apply for temporary use of alternative facilities, meaning bathroom line of sight. We approved that last year for a kindergarten room. So the facilities are very standard. Most providers in the area would have this if we partnered with them. And our district would have this already for classrooms that are set up. But this would also, to provide the level to meet the 200 plus students, Right now, our district facilities would not be able to handle that. Because not everything would be in a line of sight or bathrooms in the classroom. So if we were to bring everyone long-term into our buildings, modifications of the facilities long-term would have to be done. However, as part of our application, we have thought about that expansion over time.
Thanks, Jason. Community involvement is a critical component and a cornerstone of a successful preschool program, because the goal ultimately with a preschool program is to have students transition from home or from a daycare center into a preschool program, right? So community involvement is critically important. So in the application, we have to talk about the formation of an early childhood advisory council, the members who would serve on that committee, and how that committee would be, I'd like to call them a recommending body or almost like a task force. They would meet under the direction of a chair of their committee. They would discuss curriculum, instruction, facilities, community outreach, programs for parents, programs for students, transition services, and help develop some recommendations ultimately that would come to administration for implementation. So they would be the conduit, almost like the decision-making body, or the ones that make recommendations on how to make preschool better year after year. We would provide them with data based off of our screening tools, data based off of parent and community feedback, to year after year or month after month make our preschool program even stronger and even better. Now, we mentioned that community parent involvement specialist, the CPIS, who can be, that person we have to hire, and they can all be one position. The person who could do this or chair these committees might be someone like the community parent involvement specialist, who also is the preschool master teacher. They could be the chair of this committee, and they have the knowledge and experience and background to chair a committee like this and bring recommendations to Stacy, myself, and Jason for improvement year after year. But one of our school social workers would also be part of that team as well. Their main goal would be community outreach, community feedback, and improvement of the program. So, Jason mentioned as well, we, as you likely know, don't have the space for 240 additional students. We don't have the space for much more than maybe 60 or 70 more students at most, maybe less, in our facilities. The state encourages, and we are engaging in conversations with providers to do a mixed delivery model. And what this means is we would offer preschool at no cost to residents of parents in Reddington Township who have children that are aged 3 or 4 years old, and we would do it at multiple locations. We would have some locations here in our district buildings. We would have some locations with our community providers, and it would be at no cost to the parents. So you may be, or you may know someone who's sending their child to White House Prep for X amount of dollars of tuition a year. We would create an agreement with, for example, White House Prep, where children of Reddington would go to White House Prep at no tuition cost, but this funding opportunity would offset those costs. We would pay White House Prep to provide a preschool education to our students. So there would be some programs that we would run in our existing buildings. We've talked briefly about classrooms that exist where we see preschool maybe being that have bathrooms. There's one existing preschool currently at Three Bridges, which is our integrated preschool. There's one classroom with construction happening at White House School that might be able to be used as a preschool classroom. And then we have here at Hollenbrook, we're talking about the classroom where we're adding the bathroom and whether or not we can host a preschool program here, so we can have potentially 3 sites here in district. And then our goal would be to have partnerships with White House Prep, Berry Patch, Magnolia Montessori, Stanton Learning, and Global Pioneer to see if they could have preschool students attend there as well. So the mixed delivery really is this combination. We have classrooms that we can use in our schools, but then also classrooms that are in other facilities that we can use. So let's just take the private providers for just a moment. We know that we have, for example, we met with Global Pioneer Academy yesterday. So we know that they're already enrolling 10 Reddington students in the fall. The nice thing about some of these child care centers is they also offer wraparound services for parents who need it. You know, you can do a 7:30 a.m. drop off and a 4:30 p.m. pickup, and provide sort of daycare on both ends of the school day. But what I want you to sort of picture is there's a classroom with 10 Reddington students, there's a teacher already teaching them, they have to be certificated, and there's a paraprofessional already in that room. Basically what the mixed delivery model is calling for is us to bake that cost, that teacher and that para, bake that funding cost into the funding formula through the application. And what we would do is create an agreement with Global Pioneer, for example, to pay that teacher's salary, benefits, the para salary, and benefits to accommodate those 10 students that are already there. Wraparound services on either end would be the responsibility of the parent, but basically if we cover the cost for them, the parent doesn't have to pay the tuition, the child gets to stay at Global Pioneer Academy, and the parents can also contract for wraparound services. That's how the mixed delivery model could work. When we met with our first provider, we noticed, let me say this, for year one, I don't think that we can contract with all of them, right? There are students in all of them. I don't know if the grant would, I don't know if they would fund, the grant would fund all of them. I don't know if the state would want us to take on that much in year one, but we know in year 2, 3, 4, 5, there's an opportunity to grow the program as well. We got great interest, right? We met with Global Pioneer. They're interested. Their Global Pioneer was yesterday only because the woman's going to be on vacation next week, but all of them are coming next week to sit with the 3 of us to talk about this opportunity. So there's great interest in, we want to partner with you. The other nice thing about mixed delivery is, remember, we have to open year 1 mid-year. It provides an opportunity for parents to keep their kids in whatever placement they've already had set up and then just offset the cost. In other words, maybe come January 1st, parents are no longer paying tuition, but their child is still receiving a great preschool education at Stanton Learning Center and Global Pioneer Academy. And they have the wraparound services for parents who maybe have to commute. The other thing that it provides to parents too is choice. I see us going out to parents and involving the community and having them fill out a form to say, where would you like your child to attend preschool? Would it be White House School? Would it be, Three Bridges School? Or have you already created a relationship with Stanton Learning Center or someplace else? And if so, we can then place kids at different centers as parents wish and give them some choice in where their child attends preschool. Now, to expand further, there are vacant facilities in our township. There are church preschools that are no longer in use. Our Lady of Lourdes, I know, has some classrooms. I don't know if they meet our facility requirements at all, but I know that they have about 10 classrooms that are vacant and only used for religious education in the evenings. I know that there may be 1 or 2 classrooms in the church that's right next to Three Bridges School. And we've made already, in the short time, we've already made some really nice connections with the Unicom Early Childhood Learning Center, which is on the Unicom property, and is a vacant, abandoned building. It's got 15 early childhood classrooms in it. I've had several conversations with a representative from Unicom that has a direct line to the owner of the company who's already talked with him about it, and they're eager to help us if we want to lease the building or even purchase the building to provide this. So that's not a year 1 conversation with you. That's a year 5 conversation. Like if we really want to expand, there's an eagerness and an opportunity where Unicom will lease the building to us or sell the building to us, and it meets the requirements. It's got the square footage requirements, and we have to look in even further and do some measurements, but there is a bathroom in every classroom. There is a kitchen, there is an all-purpose room, and there's a great gathering area in addition to the all-purpose room. The drawback is that it's on one side of town, right? I don't know if we would be able to put all kids, all preschoolers under one roof. We may still have to offer some programs down on the Three Bridges side of town. Questions on this is the most complicated. I told you it was going to get more complicated as we get along. It's the most complicated part of the application.
Question, so for the mixed delivery, how much oversight would we have for curriculum? And also, are we, in terms of policy making, like, are we I guess I'm trying to understand, is it more like we're contracting these services out so that they don't have
to fall under the jurisdiction of our policies and?
That's a great question. And I have a preliminary answer for you. The preliminary answer is that there are sample agreements that the state has put together between school districts and private providers that would guide us. I've asked for a copy of the sample agreement. I haven't received one yet. It's something that I would certainly ask our board attorney. I'm sure that these private providers would ask their attorney to take a look at if we enter an agreement. They have to meet all of the requirements I went through, meaning they have to adopt creative curriculum or one of those other curriculum documents. They have to have the square footage requirements. They have to have a bathroom in the line of sight or in the classroom. They have to have certificated staff that are evaluated using our model. So we would have to train the directors of the providers to do that. That's what I know for sure. Anything beyond that, do they follow our school policies? Do they have to work on our school hours, our school calendar?
PD, I'm thinking also.
PD, that would be, again, collaborative between us, PD, but I think that when it comes to some of the more business sides of running schools, policies, district operations, legal liability, those sorts of things, my understanding, it's just my preliminary understanding, is basically we're creating a contract with them to be a contract service provider. They still have to carry insurance, they provide their program, they just provide it with us offsetting their costs. Is that how?
Right, and
There's a lot of different ways to do it. We've been talking about this, the three of us have been talking about this. What's better, hire our own teacher and just place them at Stanton Learning and we be responsible for them, or do we want them to have some oversight because we run our operation here? You know, how much can our district administration and staff really manage all of these satellites, or would it be better to just contract at least initially? But please,
And I
Stacey, I'm
think,
sorry.
yes, and I think one of the conversations we've had is if we are recommending or suggesting these other satellites for our students, we're responsible for them. So we want to make sure that those programs are also, running a good program so that, as Dr. Hart had said, I'm not worried about the footage. I'm worried about the curriculum. So they would adopt one of our curriculums. We've also looked at making sure that those teachers and the paraprofessionals that are in those classrooms would also be provided PD through our district. And this was only with one of the districts that we had connected with, which opened up a bunch of questions. But absolutely moving through the first year, we would move together in terms of how to supervise and observe these teachers, because these kids are ours. So we want to make sure that we are providing services. But one of the really benefits of having child providers is that wraparound service, which we don't provide. We do have students that start at one daycare in the morning, come to school, and then go to another in the afternoon. We would like to be able to avoid that. And for parents, especially for 3 or 4 year olds, having their child in one location, having the opportunity of having a mirror curriculum and program that would be offered at Reddington, but being able to provide that wraparound service would be great. So we're really looking at building partnerships with these child care facilities, PD, and real good collaboration. And starting small, I think, is real important. We had a really great, meeting with the first person who was very open. So we're excited about next week when we meet with the other child care providers and really determining who would be the best match for, moving forward for year one.
One of the barriers that we realized in wanting to create this partnership with our providers is they don't operate on the same calendar we do. And moreover, they have to actually provide more days because not every working parent works, 8:30 to 3:30, 181 days a year. So when we are closed for winter break, they're open, right? Those are the kinds of things. And when we're closed for PD, they may be open. So when it comes to professional development, those kinds of things, these are not insurmountable challenges, but these are just some of the challenges that rose to the top of the conversation was, yeah, we want to partner with you, but we recognize that part of your responsibility is you have to be open from 7 to 6 every day for parents to be able to work and offer those wraparound services. We don't want to impede that for them, because let's not forget, they also have infants to 2-year-olds too. Like, they provide a service to our community that we don't want to interrupt by also offering a 3 and 4-year-old program. So we have to make sure that we just collaborate with them. We, like I said, we had a great meeting. So
It's really it was very
really was,
eye-opening for
yeah.
us, very eye-opening. We're like, really, you do that?
Yeah.
Like, but really it's very helpful for us. But I think this is where we're moving in terms of really providing preschool for all of our students that is free, 3 and 4-year-olds, and how to collaborate with private, facilities, school, and then just bringing it all together for our kids.
Don't forget that preschool coach, that person who's going to have those multiple hats is really the person that's going to have to bring all of this together, right? They're the connective tissue that's going to have to make sure that all of these programs, whether it's 3 of our different buildings and 2 service providers, are all on similar pages in terms of the education that we're providing for kids. And that's a key role here as we look to expand this. Carolyn, did you have a question?
I did.
Yeah.
So one of the things that we talked about starting small. How do you start small? I believe as soon as the community hears about this, my kids haven't been in preschool in 20 some odd years. I can just imagine what the cost is right now. How do you start? Is it a lottery? How do you say, yes, there are 266 kids eligible, but we're just going to pick 25 lucky winners to get free preschool? I mean, that's.
So this is a struggle and something that we have to work through. I'm leaning toward the belief of starting small would be better, even if it's at the cost of having to do a lottery and saying, unfortunately, no for this year to X number of parents. I think what would be worse for the district and worse for kids is to try to open large in year 1 and realize how unmanageable it is and do nothing for a year but put out fires and field complaints and have parents be unfortunately dissatisfied with the services that are provided to their children. Some parents, I would hate for this to happen, some parents may want to opt that this is not good for my child if it's too big at first. I think we would have to do a lot of it in year 1. That's my initial thought, right? We've talked about this, how big, how small, how many students can we service? I mean, we already do a lottery for preschool, but I think that's important, is that we want to do it right, and we want to do right by the kids. And I think by starting small and making it manageable for the existing administration, for the existing staff that we have, because really the only new people that we would hire would be the teachers for the classrooms and potentially that part-time position of the preschool coach. Otherwise, we're going to be tapping our existing resources to make this program a success in multiple locations with our youngest learners, right? That's a lot to tackle using our existing staff. Second, and this is just my feeling, and it's just an indication of how the state is evaluating these proposals. I think if we write an application that asks for too much upfront funding, I think that we may lose points on the overall application. I fear that if we right now our entire universe is over or close to $4 million of additional funding from the state. If we ask for that in year 1, I fear that the state will see that, the way I see it, is almost too much that you're biting off, and you're not going to be able to chew it, and they may deny the application, and we may not be able to offer anything. It's just my inclination. Nobody from the state has ever said start small because the likelihood of you being funded if you're smaller is better. But based off of some of the districts that have already been funded in Hunterdon County that are small and wrote small applications, it tells me that smaller might be better, just in terms of the funding and how the state perceives the funding. It's my best answer. I know, we may have to turn kids away, but you can look at the bright side, glass half full. It's more than what we have now, more than what we can offer now if we open it up, and with the promise that it's going to be getting better, bigger and bigger every year. Yeah, please.
So how many students do we currently have in preschool? And how many have we turned away? Do you have a count?
We haven't, actually, we have not. So going into this school year, so we have a couple different preschools, we have a couple different preschool programs. So let me map this out for you. We have a preschool disabilities
I'm gonna
program.
take a drink for this one.
Okay.
You've
So
got
we have
this,
a
Casey.
preschool- We have a preschool disabilities
Justina.
program that is for our children that have IEPs that are just not ready for a general education program. They need a very highly structured program. They could have delays significant in social, language, fine motor. So going into this next school year, we have 5 children for that program. We also have a preschool.
Stacy, can I stop you for 1 second?
Yeah.
Preschool disabilities, 5 children who are already coming free of tuition, right? We are obligated through special education code to provide services for those children, so they're already coming.
They don't come under this funding.
We can't.
But as we're presenting this, you need to realize that we need to like plan for different classrooms. So we have this program. Coming into our preschool program that includes both general education students and children with IEPs. We have 10 special education students and we have 17 general education students. So that is 27 students right now in September. As Dr. Hart had said, for these preschool programs, you can have up to 15 students. Now, I will add that in our little pocket, we also have children who are coming from early intervention. We have 6 students that are coming up. We have 4 that are coming up until October. We don't have a good deal of information about these children. These children can go into our preschool disabilities program, which is our self-contained, or they could be children that qualify for an IEP, but could be in our general education program. So we also have to have those children that we have to think about in terms of planning for next year, in terms of how many classrooms we need to have. Now, we also have children that could move into the district that we have no idea in terms of what their needs are. So in planning, where was I going with this,
I don't know.
Dr. Hart? Where was I going?
I'll say this.
In terms of like classrooms?
Classroom, so classroom space is a premium, but those 17 students that are general ed that are already coming to us as tuition students, we can include them in the application,
Yes.
right? So any students at age 3 and 4 that exist in one of our partner providers or in our district can already be included. So it's almost like we write this funding opportunity, these 17 students, that teacher in that classroom comes out of our general fund local tax budget and goes into this application, so that frees up some general fund money. Not necessarily, do you follow what I mean? So we can account for these students with the teacher that teaches them already in this funding. So when Jason does the budget worksheet, he's gonna put the teacher's name, her salary, her benefits, because she's already teaching the 17 students. And I don't know where you were going beyond that.
No, I was
Well, I
just,
have a
I was trying to
follow-up
share in terms of, because when we do look at the general education, I know this funding is really looking at general ed students, but really we have special education students that really do qualify, that need to be in this general education program. So that looking at the big picture, we really need to plan for classrooms for these students. And Dr. Hart will say, like, can we move these kids over here and these kids over here? And I'm like, yeah, no, we can't. But that's where I come in and be like, no, Dr. Hart, we can't. We need to have these different classrooms. And I will tell you, like, this is so exciting that we have the opportunity to provide free preschool to children in Reddington that right now it's amazing, getting them ready for kindergarten. And the fact that we're able to have the opportunity to partner with outside childcare facilities that can also provide parents that need before school and after school services, that we also can partner with in making sure that they are using a state approved curriculum. They are using an observation tool for their teachers, that they are partnering with our district for providing PD, that we will also partner with transition services for those children coming from preschool to our kindergarten. It is amazing. It is a wonderful service, opportunity for our students and our parents. I don't know, that's where I was going.
Good luck, Jessica.
For the
You
special
got me started.
education students, that would be in an outside facility. How would we provide?
So typically our special education, I'm not gonna say. For our students that require a more self-contained program, those kiddos would come to us. For our
Or here, where
students,
they're coming.
for the self-contained. For our students that would perhaps go into our general education program that could require maybe speech services or whatever, they could go to an outside facility, an outside child provider, where we provide services or consultation with that program. There are so many questions and so many
I know.
opportunities
Sorry.
with this, as like you brought up something that we didn't even think about, but we can do consultation and we can provide services in these facilities. I think probably one of the big picture here is that we want to work with parents. We want to make sure those kids are getting preschool. We want to make sure that if that child needs additional services, that as a district, we can provide those services through consultation. And it really is about being a partnership.
But then how do you pick and choose which child goes to say the
I
White House
think
classroom
part of
or
it
to-
really comes to the parent, because as Dr. Hart had said, this mixed delivery system provides the parent an opportunity for choice. And there's a
We
lot,
also
there's a lot of
have-
questions.
Let me also say too,
Someone out.
that in going out to the community and telling parents we're offering this, one of our thoughts was that parents would indicate a first, second, third choice provider or in district, and we could ask them to prioritize things. What is most important to you? Is it, great, you can go to Stanton Learning Center, but when you go there, you're gonna have to provide your own transportation. Or do you need transportation? Do you need the wraparound services at Global Pioneer? That might be the better place for you versus maybe coming to Hollenbrook School, which operates on a completely different schedule in general, and preschool would be like their own kind of school operating within school.
Which
So
is something that we
that's-
currently do right now for our preschool lottery. Parents do put an option, do you want an AM or PM, or does it matter? So that option is put in there, and sometimes parents don't get what they want.
Think about it this way too, I know there's more questions. We know at Global Pioneer, kids in Reddington already exist, they're already attending there for September. That's likely true, although we haven't met with them yet. That's all likely true for White House Prep, that's likely true for Stanton Learning, that's likely true for Berry Patch. We're all parents, right? Picture this. You have your 3-year-old enrolled in White House Prep, and you get the fantastic news that as of January 1, it's gonna be free. I mean, that's how simple this could be. The students already exist in these places. What if we just incorporate the students that exist into the funding opportunity? You don't need to change providers. You don't need to disrupt your child. They stay in the same class with the same teacher as long as all the requirements are met. It just becomes free. That's how you could potentially view the application, is that's the opportunity here, that Reddington children already attend these providers by parent choice. What if they can attend there at no cost to the parent? Caroline, I see you, but I know that Jennifer and Michelle have questions too.
I'm really glad that we're discussing the wraparound program,
Yeah.
because I know that's so important and critical to a lot of
100%.
parents in the town. And then conversely, is there an option or a choice to do full day or half day for preschool for 3 and 4?
Our understanding, and that's a question to the state, our understanding is no, that it's a full day program. Talking to other districts who've received this funding, generally their programs are operating according to the elementary school schedule. The question we really have for the state is, can we operate a full day program and have it not mirror exactly the 8:30 to 3:30 that we do in our K3 buildings? Can it be a 9 to 2:30, right? Transportation is a big question mark for us as well. So, we have to offer. In order to be able to offer, we might have to rearrange the times of the preschool to be able to do bus runs, just with limited bus drivers and buses. But yeah, great question. Michelle?
Yeah, I had a question about, or a comment actually. So I recognize the need to start small, I think that's smart, and I also recognize the perceived inequity that Caroline raised. So I'm not sure if a committee will work on this, but my recommendation would be to have a very clear communication plan with the community so that you can kind of get ahead of any backlash or issues. And it's great to hear there's already a lottery system with preschool, because I think that will set you up for success when you're rolling this out.
Thank you. Agreed. Carol?
My fear though, so we talked about starting small with maybe Berry Patch, for instance, and there's 11 kids already there. In that lottery, some of those 11 are going to win the lottery and others are not. So the ones that don't win the lottery, are they in the same classroom with the Reddington kids, or? So they'll be in the same classroom, getting the same education, but paying thousands of dollars, while the person sitting next to them is paying nothing.
Well,
Is there any way that we can even it, so
yeah,
they all kind of, especially if we're just going to a particular place where there's existing students, so maybe they all get half price as opposed to, and we have.
or one better, maybe the lottery doesn't happen until after we've already included them in the available spaces, right? The last thing I want to do is disrupt a child's education and have a parent have to switch schools or switch classrooms or something. So the 10 kids that maybe exist at Berry Patch, and parents have been paying the tuition all year, when we open up the program as of January 1, maybe they're just automatically enrolled. Those additional 5 seats become the lottery, right? And maybe when we open up, if we're opening up another class right next to it that only has 2 kids, maybe those other 13 seats become the lottery, combined, with a total of, I don't know what my math was, 21 or 22 additional seats. That could be another way to look at it too.
I think this is going to be a huge challenge, because we're not talking about, you win a lottery, it's, and you win a toaster. I mean, this is a significant amount of money, and it's, is there any thought about, so we part of the eligibility is the free and reduced lunch kids. Do they have 2 tickets into the lottery as a, do they have a better chance of winning the lottery, since they're actually the kids who are helping us to get to this money in the first place and probably have the most need? Is that part of consideration in the lottery?
And I don't know if we can design in the application a lottery system necessarily like that, but when it comes to free and reduced kids, there are other opportunities for services beyond what just we can offer. So I'll say that this isn't the only thing that might be offered, but that definitely could be a consideration in terms of, when we go over the program.
I just want to add also that also looking at the different child care facilities, they also have to meet the requirements. So some of the child care facilities, they don't have certificated staff. So that totally eliminates those children. Now, certainly those children have the opportunity of applying to, I'm just going to just say Berry Patch, that have the certificated staff. They can apply there for enrollment, but we also have like a threshold in terms of who can be partnerships with us, because they have to meet the criteria.
Right, but they might give them the, the reason to go out and get certificates. They have
Absolutely, and
Same
that's
thing
what
with the
we're
curriculum.
meeting with them.
That's why we're meeting with
Yes.
the same thing with
Right.
curriculum. If they don't use one of those 4 curriculums, they're not eligible. But maybe that's the incentive for them to say, look, in year one, Dr. Hart, we don't want to partner, but come back to us in year two, we'll be ready with a curriculum.
Yeah,
right?
and that was Dr. Hart's conversation with the first person we had met, like, maybe it's not year one, but maybe year two, because again, this is a 5-year rollout. And starting small, I think, is really important, where we don't want to like start this whole big thing and not be able to fulfill the students' needs, but starting small and rolling it out, because there's a lot of other components of this program that we also have to implement in terms of adding like a coach and an INRS for preschool. All of that is really good. Whether or not we're getting this application or not, I think it's that we're moving forward anyhow with, Dr. Hart doesn't know this, but I want to move forward with these, these additional staff, because I think it makes our program stronger. Regardless if we get the funding this year or not. We know this is where the state wants to go and this is where we need to go.
So, and when it comes to the challenge too of rolling this out and community perception, let's turn the challenge and the perception, the negativity, into something positive, right? Wouldn't it be great if we had a room full of people here at a board meeting, stepping up to the microphone, asking for, requesting, demanding that we open more preschool? I mean, isn't that a good problem for us to be solving as a board? It's difficult, yes, it's challenging, but then we have to put our heads together and decide, how do we want to move forward? Are we going to lease Unicom next year and fix the building up and make it ready for our kids? We're going to build buildings and things like that. That's the cool stuff that we can really problem solve. And what a great problem to have if the community is saying, we love what you've done in year one. We want more. I think that would be a challenge, of course, but I think that it would be a great thing to hear from our community to say, you've done a great job, you're providing an excellent service, we want more.
No downside to providing preschool to our kids. No downside whatsoever.
Jason.
Jason had his hand up. I
Jason,
bet it has to do something with money. We don't want to hear from that.
I was like a preschooler, I was raising my hand. I just want to joke from a pure math standpoint. We would need to meet the 90% of preschoolers that are general ed. We would need 18 teachers in 18 classrooms. Even if each provider, which are 5, had 2 available, that's 10. We only have 3, potentially 4 rooms in our building. We would very likely not be able to meet all 18 in year one, even if we strove to it. Further, if you look when we get to it, the deadlines, we are going to get notified in September if we get the funding. Finding 18 preschool certified teachers after school again would be incredibly challenging. So the odds of us actually trying to strive for participation for everyone in the community would be almost impossible in year one.
Yeah, and we wouldn't get everybody, not everybody is ready to have their kids start preschool, especially in January, it's the middle of the year already. So it's not everybody, it's, I think we just have to be cognizant of that the parent whose child is sitting next to, their little friend in preschool, and one is paying thousands of dollars a month, and the other is getting it for free. They both live in the same community, they both pay the same taxes, they both go to the same school, they're both being taught by the same teacher, same curriculum, same everything, but one Reddington parent is paying, and I have no idea how much preschool costs these days, but I'm guessing thousands a month.
It's outrageous.
It's absolutely outrageous.
I don't know how I expect pitchforks in the.
But I would avoid that. Sure, trust me when I say I would try to avoid that. I wouldn't design a program where we have a Reddington student next to another Reddington student paying tuition sitting in the same classroom. If they exist and they're sitting at Berry Patch already, come January 1, they either are all free and we open up the lottery for whatever seats we have available,
But
or
it's not a
very
lottery, and it's not really, everybody's not on equal footing. If they happen to,
yeah.
all things that can be solved, and
yeah.
I am absolutely positively, behind preschool. I think it's a wonderful thing. I just think that this first year is going to be a little bit rough.
Think about the kids that already won the lottery, that are gonna be sitting in our classrooms on September 1. I mean, they're already in, they already won the lottery. Do we need to re-enter them in the lottery and then displace them? I'm just thinking about kids here. I'm just thinking kids and programming.
But we also, did I misunderstand, we currently did not turn any preschool students.
We
away.
have not, no. Every child that was in the lottery has a spot.
So
And
you
this
haven't
is-
experienced the wrath of a parent who
No, I-
uses the lottery for thousands of dollars.
Yeah, no, I totally, and believe me, this is not, I'm not discounting the comments that you're making or that anybody's making. This is actually very good because it helps clarify our thinking and putting things into the application. So I really do appreciate that we have to think these things through a little bit more. Remember, this was last week, right? Like this is
Right.
last week to this week. So things that we definitely need to be aware of. Just pardon my excitement at this opportunity, I guess, is sort of where I'm trying to envision that maybe, that I don't want to be afraid of some of the challenges for fear that if we become afraid of all of the challenges and wait for the perfect plan, that we will never roll this out. So, but points all well taken. Beth, I know you have.
Yeah, no, just a comment, the enrollees for preschool for half day sign a contract for what tuition is gonna be for full year, half day rate, all that. So just consider, they may not want to immediately move to a full-time program, and they've signed a contract saying that they're gonna get these services for the year, so just be mindful of that.
Appreciate it. Sure.
I was just gonna ask if you could re-clarify what decision or approval you're looking for today, so
Sure.
we can be clear, what do we need to solve today, and what are we comfortable saying we don't have the answer for, but we feel like the group here can solve for it? That would be really helpful.
What I'm looking from all of you is a majority opinion of the board of yes, Dr. Hart moved forward with the application. That we support this as an investigation and that we would support the funding with finer details worked out over the course of August to January when we have to open. So do you want to apply? Because ultimately it's board resolution on August 22nd, that has to accompany the application, even though it's due the 11th. We have to follow up with a board resolution. The application is incomplete unless we have a certified board resolution and you have said, yes, Dr. Hart, go after the funding. So the question is, do you support this conversation and this initial application so that come August 22nd, we have a certified resolution to send over to the state? If we don't, then we've done the application for naught because it won't be a completed application.
Do you want a motion for that, or is that a?
Not tonight, the motion would come, I need a straw poll, do we support just the initial application with the finer details to be worked out between the application? We won't even know if we get the money until September, so this could be, all not happening right now, and we won't need to talk about it again after August until next year. And then we'll have more time to really think more about this. The other thing was that we likely knew, even though this has existed for previous years, we likely knew that our school would not be eligible, would not qualify for funding just because of our tier. It seems like the state has sort of changed, and as years go on and the funding exists and it's not being sent out to districts, they are opening the floodgates a little wider every year to more districts to be eligible for the funding. I mean, it was invitation only at first, right, Stacy, and then it went out to tier 1, tier 2 districts, and now it's like, if you run a full day kindergarten, just apply, right? So I imagine that this money is sitting in the Department of Education, not enough districts have applied for it, and they're asking for applicants. Jody, did you have a question?
I did. I just wanted to clarify. So what we need to be prepared to offer is a full day equivalent, whatever that means, of preschool education for 3 and 4-year-olds, right? And that is 5 days a week as well?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. So a couple other things here. Jason, if you just wanted to talk a little bit about how you would prepare the budget. There are formulas and there's budget worksheets that come along with the application. Anything related to preschool, including existing staff. For example, our school social worker that we want to have be part of a preschool committee, if we want to take 5% of her salary and put it into this funding application, we can. A portion of Stacy's salary as the director of the program can go into this. I'm trying to think of some other current staff that maybe we can add in. Kristen Higgins is the principal of Three Bridges School who already operates a preschool. I mean, there are little portions of existing salaries that can be offset in budget preparation. And the nurse, of course, an existing nurse. So any existing position that is going to dedicate a percentage of time to preschool can be calculated in the formula with the budget, in addition to anybody new that we have to hire. Jason?
That was a pretty good summary. I mean, we basically get $15,000 to $17,000 per student. So really depending on how many students would enroll would determine the budget. So, we said we had 3 classrooms in district, 45 students, you take that math, that's the budget. And then you just need to separate it out based on the employees that Dr. Art was talking about, plus supplies, benefits and things like that. So it's pretty straightforward, and that is separately accounted for, really apart from the general budget.
This is why we're talking about it now. August 11th, the application is due. September 8th, we get notified whether or not we have the award. January 2nd, the program must start. Stacy and I were talking briefly today about maybe moving up to January 2nd to maybe sometime in the fall of opening the program. And the only reason we were toying with that today is because, one, I think that the likelihood of us receiving the funding might get greater for the longer percentage of the school year, year 1, that we would offer the program. So if we want to open October 1, I'm not suggesting we would. I think that preference is given to districts that open sooner. The second thing is because we already have an existing program, I almost feel like for purposes of the application, that could be included as part of the application. We have a program that exists, we have students already sitting in preschool seats. Why should it not count for us to have the program, at least that portion of the program, open by such a time? But right now, we're looking at a January 2nd program start, which is the absolute drop-dead deadline of the program starting. Just a little fun little quote about early childhood education. And then if you have any questions, let us know, and a couple of references. But you've asked a lot of questions, but we're happy to field, take more questions. We're excited. This is an enormous challenge. It really is, my guidance, I'm looking for you to say, thumbs up, go ahead and at least try Dr. Hart, it's worth it. Or, and knowing that we still have more conversation to have after September 8th if we get a little bit of funding. Stacey, is there anything else to?
No, other than, this is crazy. He should have had, when we got this information to start, right? That should have been the first timeline.
July
Because turning
11th?
this over,
July 11th.
I just have to say that the excitement from my team working with the preschool is like, oh my gosh, this is so exciting. And we have so many pieces already in place. This is also driving us to put other pieces in place sooner than later. Professional development, other screening tools, so that regardless if we're moving forward with a lot of things that the state is looking for us to move forward with, which is really exciting. Anything to develop stuff for our kids is really exciting. So, yeah, we're excited.
Yeah.
Jason might not be as excited as Dr. Hart and I, but Dr. Hart and I are like, yes, so exciting.
The last thing I would ask
Yeah.
was, I'm in support of, filing an application. I think it would be wonderful to provide preschool education. But could we find out what the cost would be to lease Unicom? Do we have any idea?
We have no idea. 2 conversations with a high-level executive who is not the owner but has a direct pipeline with the owner suggest that they are incredibly interested and they want to help us out. The cost basis, and understandably so, I think he was fearful of trying to estimate something, and at the same time I was kind of pushing, and I understand why he was hesitant. The second thing that you have to know about the Unicom building is it will need some refurbishment. I mean, it's been vacant since 2015. I took a tour of it. There have been roof leaks. There are some concrete and pavement repairs that would have to happen. So these are all things that we have to think about. And we have to staff it. And that would be a totally separate site. Great things about the building. The playground equipment is already there, the basic infrastructure of the facility is there, the double entry vestibule is there, the offices for administrative staff and nursing staff, the kitchen, it's already there, it already exists. Something else that you can consider, and again, I don't know for year one, but something you could consider is really nice modular units that we can put on our property. They do come with bathrooms, they can be attached to a school in a way that creates some consistency with safety and security. I know that my kid's school has them, they have kindergarten classes in modular units at his school. It's an option to add classrooms to our existing buildings or have a whole modular unit be a preschool building as like an annex to Three Bridges or an annex to Holmberg School. I mean, so if the public does really want us to expand, and we have an appetite as a board to really expand quickly, doing some things like modular units is an option. Jason, I don't want to misspeak, but I don't know if something like leasing or purchasing modular units can be built into that funding, the application funding. I'm not entirely sure, and I know that there's a
I don't know,
district that did it.
South Plainfield did build on their program with these modular
Yeah.
buildings, so it was part of it. The other piece is that we would be able, with the modulars, is be able to self-contain our program. But I also want to say that with the private facilities, the childcare, they do offer that before school and after school wraparound, because that was one of the questions they did have that we met with. Are you gonna take our kids away from us? But I think that they do provide a service for families and for children that as a school we're not able to provide.
I'm pretty sure the lease can go into the funding. I don't know if modular units can. Do you know the answer to that? I don't know.
I do know that there's sufficient money in the grant per pupil to support things like that. Because if you think about 240 students and potentially $4 million to cover those students, it is a significant amount of money.
For the application, are you really laying out 5 full years, or is this really just what year 1 looks like, or how are they asking for that?
By and large, as we fill out the application, we're really focusing on like paragraphs on year one and how we're going to implement, and then we're adding like a sentence or two about, and we'll expand this by doing A, B, and C in the future. So year one, it's mostly year one, and then every year we would have to refile application, and we would have, it's called preschool expansion. They want us to expand every year to get to our universe.
And we really are looking at planning a 5-year plan with this, thinking ahead.
Do we know what proportion of the kids starting kindergarten have had preschool education?
I don't know that.
We can probably find that out with our registration packets. So we could probably have the building secretaries look at the packets of we have about 125.
Great question, Carol. Yeah.
Because
we're talking about
that would give us a
266.
perspective.
Not all of them actually are
Yeah.
interested in preschool,
Yeah.
or have been. So maybe that'll.
And I will share though that we have many parents who apply for our preschool program that are really looking for a full day program.
Right.
Do I have that number? I don't, but I do know the conversations that I've had with many parents who are looking for full day programs.
Yeah, might be more interesting. But yeah, I'm just curious, what we've seen in the past.
We may take a look at the preschool application, or the registration packets, because I think there's a question on there, any previous schools attended, and we can see if they went to Berry Patch or Magnolia Montessori.
I'm just curious about the funding, so this just comes from the state? The state suddenly has money for universal pre-K?
Yeah, so this is, the funding is additional, there's strings attached to it, it has to be for preschool, but it is additional state aid funding that comes from the state for the specific
Yeah, I
purpose.
just hadn't heard anything about it, it's a lot
This
of
is-
money there.
It's existed for years. Jason, I don't know if you know at the state level budgetarily how it's allocated and why it exists and why it's existed for the time that it has, but it's additional education aid that they have, and likely tied to some federal money as well too.
Yeah, that's in essence how they're doing it, and there's such an influx of federal funds that expire in September of next year, 2024, that they've been able to fund projects, not this, but then free up their general budget to put in reserves. And that has allowed them to do other things such as this long-term. So they're counting on reallocation of their existing general fund, prioritizing things like this and other special projects.
And Randy, you bring up a good point. While this is an opportunity for competitive funding and it's optional, it's just a spidey sense, right? Like my sense is going up that before this governor's term is over, there may be some sort of requirement that comes from the state in terms of universal preschool. I don't know that for fact. It's just a feeling that this is an initiative of this Department of Education and this governor. And my feeling is, at the very least, it's good for us to be thinking about it and applying for this funding opportunity, because at some point it might be a have to, not an opportunity, but you have to do it. On whatever scale, I don't know, but it could grow. So I'm gathering that there's a apply for the grant. Okay. All right.
All right, I won't sleep tonight.
So is
All
that
right,
already?
forget.
Stacey, we have a lot of writing to do. Stacey, you have a lot of number crunching to do. That's all I have for my superintendent report. Thank you so much. And I usually don't spend this much time on a summer board meeting talking about these things, but this was important and it's obviously timely. So.
Thank you, Dr. Hart.
Of course.
And it is exciting, there's no question about it. And we have universal support for this preschool possibility. Okay, we are now open to the public, limited to action items on the agenda.
Actually, I did have a couple of questions, clarifications, I guess. So Tom Curtis, White House Station, and Jason, you had mentioned, or Jason had mentioned that there was, the grant, I guess, was $17,000 per student, roughly. Was that per year? Okay, and then the second question, the current students that we have in the general ed preschool program, are those also state funded? So that was it.
You want to see if there's more questions, and I'll answer everything.
Anyone else? Anyone online?
Nothing in the chat.
Address that?
Yeah. Mr. Curtis, as far as the funding application goes, there's a chart, there's a spreadsheet that gives the state cost per pupil by county, by type of provider. It has a Head Start rate, which is a preschool provider, a private preschool provider rate, and then a public preschool provider rate. So when we're doing the budget worksheets, in order to accommodate for the numbers of students we anticipate, whether they're at a Head Start program, a private provider, or in our program, in order for him to do the calculations, he has to say 15 students in district are at this rate, 10 students at a private provider are at this rate, and that is what we put into our worksheet to come up with our funding formula that we ask the state for in terms of funding. The rates are provided to us by the state in the application, and we use them to do our budget worksheets. Our current students in our pre-K program are funded through a combination of local funds, state funds, as well as IDEA, Individuals with Disabilities in Education funds, which are federal funds that are earmarked directly for students with special needs in public schools. So it's a combination of things, right, Stacey? We don't have, preschool's not just one, it dips into all three of our budget sources.
Right.
Can I ask a follow-up on that?
Please.
So let's say within the next several years that you decide to adopt this as a program, municipality says, yeah, we're on board. I'm assuming it goes some kind of a vote to the municipality. What do you anticipate would be the cost of that program? Around 4 million, or it really depends, I guess, on the additional number of students. Based on the 244 students, it would be roughly maybe $4 million a year additional.
It depends, right? So it's tough to answer that question. But if we look at 240 students, if you were to multiply it times let's say the in-district amount, we would come up with a number, and that would be approximate cost of what the program would be. Jason, I don't know if you have that with you. No, it's okay if you don't. So that's how we would calculate it. So let's say we were going to create our own in-district program only. We would take 240 students, or even the 266 that we would anticipate enrollment. We would multiply it times the in-district tuition rate. We would come up with our formula, and that would be the overall funding. What does that not include? It doesn't include maybe questions that we would have to go out to the taxpayer in terms of like, does this warrant another building in addition to a building or some sort of capital project? You know, those are the things that wouldn't necessarily be included in the cost. You can't build buildings with this state funding, right? But that would be municipal funds. That would be local tax levy.
Thanks.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Okay, moving on to correspondence. We did get an email from ER regarding Juneteenth. And next on item 6 on the agenda, board action. So starting with the approval of administrative reports, we have a motion to adopt 1.01 to 1.04.
Move that. Second, Carol.
I get a roll call?
Questions?
Oh, any questions regarding this? Okay, no questions? Roll call, please.
Ms. Beverly?
Yes.
Ms. Fiore?
Yes.
Ms. Benson?
Yes.
Mr. Peach?
Yes.
Ms. Byborski?
Yes.
Ms. Ryan?
Yes.
Ms. Wolf?
Yes.
Dr. Sucio?
Yes.
Passes.
Moving on to the approval of minutes, a motion to adopt 2.01 to 2.02.
So move that.
Second, Carolyn.
Any questions? I get a roll call.
Ms. Beverly?
Yes.
Ms. Fiore?
Yes.
Ms. Menzer?
Abstain.
Mr. Peach?
Abstain.
Ms. Byborski?
Yes.
Ms. Ryan?
Yes.
Ms. Wolf?
Yes.
Dr. Sucio?
Yes.
Passes.
Okay, the finance facilities, committee report, a motion to adopt 3.01 to 3.15. 3.1. I have,
You might have had a draft agenda.
I did, I apologize, yes, 3.54.
So move that.
Second, Michelle.
The last item is just take that off the agenda.
And there is a committee report, so I'll present that now. Okay, the Finance Committee met on Thursday, July 6th, and the first item we discussed was the 23-24 capital project update. We talked about the RMS roof and the HVAC system. The roof project should begin this month and hopefully be completed in 2 weeks once it's started. We did receive 2 or 3 HVAC quotes that came in over budget, and we're still waiting for additional quotes to keep us under budget. There's a 10-month lead time for the HVAC equipment, and this likely will not be installed until the spring of 2024. The old HVAC equipment will remain until the new equipment is available. We then talked about the elementary bathrooms. Several quotes came in over budget. The original plan was 2 bathrooms in Hollenbrook School, 1 at White House and 1 at Three Bridges. We changed the plan to 1 bathroom at Hollenbrook, and the White House and the Three Bridges additional bathroom plans will not change. All 3 schools will continue to be in compliance, and we would like to utilize the same vendor who completed the curriculum office and stay within our budget. This project should begin this month and completed by the end of August. We then talked about the Three Bridges School boiler, where Unitemp will begin to work on the repair. Next topic was solar. Consultant still is completing work to prepare for the architect, and the architect is currently delayed, and this will likely, we'll get another update in the fall. We then talked about some maintenance projects. We're moving forward with the roof and the bathroom projects. We completed sidewalk replacements and floor replacements at Hollenbrook, and the water fountain replacements at RMS. The projects in progress include pupil service office refresh and curriculum conference room at the Board of Ed office, outdoor classroom refresh at White House School, faculty room refresh and boiler electrical upgrade at Three Bridges, faculty room enhancements at Hollenbrook, and the hallway tile enhancement as well, faculty rooms refresh and LED lighting upgrades at RMS. The next thing we talked about were the IT projects, the phone migration project, network switch replacements, and video camera upgrades. All should be completed by the end of the summer. The next topic was the radio service by the first responders with the Township of Reddington. Dr. Hart and Jason Bowen presented the budget to the township, and they discussed radio service. Our radios work in our buildings. The township radios do not work well in certain parts of our buildings. They don't want to use our radios or switch channels to use our frequency due to safety concerns and potential lack of communication in an emergency. The quotes ranged from $50,000 to $250,000 to upgrade the system in order for the township radios to work throughout our buildings and grounds. The costs depend on the number of frequencies needed for the police department, fire department, and EMS, as well as multiple repeaters. Additional quotes will be obtained, and we will revisit our level of financial commitment. The next topic was the non-resident staff tuition for preschool and our K-8 program. Currently, it is $4,200 for the past school year, 22-23, and we discussed whether or not to change this cost. This does have a minimal impact on our overall budget, so we agreed to keep the cost the same. The next topic was transportation stipends, and we're in very good shape in our transportation department. We believe this is due to the efforts made to work with our transportation staff, the recruiting processes, and various stipends offered. We will likely maintain most, if not all, of our stipends, but we will revisit this topic next month. We then talked about the paraprofessional stipends, and there are currently a few openings. We may decide to keep the finder's fee and the hiring bonus, and we'll also revisit this topic next month. We then talked about our Apple agreement. Apple is historically independent and creates contracts that favor only their company. Apple has discontinued allowing purchasing through the state contracts and cooperatives in New Jersey, as they will not provide certain state forms that are required to purchase above $17,500. With a direct agreement with Apple, we can purchase below that threshold given circumstances. We agreed to move forward since the iPads for our youngest students will need to be replaced in the near future, and this is not a huge financial commitment. We then talked about the McKinney-Vento students. This is a court case that deals with the homeless or displaced students. We will have 2 students in September where this law applies, and we are fiscally responsible for these 2 students. We then selected our next meeting, which will be for the next 2 meetings. One is August 16th, and the next is September the 27th. Any questions about those minutes?
Question about the township radio, I guess, I don't know, whatever the needs are. What is the timeline? Is it sort of something that, is it something that we just became aware of and we, kind of how is that priority wise? And is that something we're looking at for budgeting for next year? Just trying to wrap my head around those big numbers.
Well, that was kind of what this discussion was about, is the numbers, the range was huge.
Yeah.
So that's why we wanted to revisit it, because some questions had come up. So we're hoping it's within the next, the next time. We want the township to be involved in this, but we're just not sure. So we're still working with them, honestly, to work it out.
Yeah, when talking in our committee, the thought was, because those 2 numbers are so far apart, that we really need to get together with the township and get some real numbers before we decide to start budget planning with them on this, and really get some tangible numbers. And I had a phone call today with the township administrator. We talked, and we're going to set something up in a meeting in the next week or so to try to talk about this and come together in terms of how we share the cost. And I don't know, Jason, if is this something that was allowable through your SR ARP funding, which expires September of next year, so we definitely want to get it done before the end of this year.
Thank you.
Yep.
So a question,
Yeah.
The letter here from the architect, he wants $19,500 for asbestos treatment. You guys are okay with that? That's reasonable? I wish he would put in what the hours are. It's just nothing but just a fixed fee. It's kind of hard to.
Yeah, the asbestos abatement cost is basically going to be passed down to a group that has to come out and inspect our facilities for asbestos and the need for remediation. They have done that at those buildings are, because construction is actually underway right now in the adjacent building. And White House was found to have asbestos that needed removal. So this fee is really a pass-through to a group that does asbestos investigation to make sure that before construction occurs, that it is reviewed appropriately.
Okay, that's the engineer. So the architect's gonna pay the engineer?
Correct.
All right. You're okay, it's reasonable, you're okay with it? It's-
It's a
I
little
don't know
more.
anything about it.
Yeah, it's a little more expensive than in-house, so when we were talking to, normally we do asbestos in-house. We hire directly. It is usually a little bit more cost-effective, I would say 8 to 12,000. Unfortunately, when we reached out to our asbestos groups that we are aware of, they are facing like a labor and a shortage that they cannot handle the workload. So we had to reach out to San Marino for the services.
Any other questions regarding the committee? Okay. Moving on to education and technology. Okay, we'll get a roll call. Thank you.
Mrs. Better,
Yes.
Mrs. Bureau,
Yes.
Mrs. Benson,
Yes.
Mr. Beach,
Yes.
Mrs. Barbarsky,
Yes.
Mrs. Ryan,
Yes.
Mrs. Wolf,
Yes.
Dr. Sucio,
Yes.
passes.
Moving on to education and technology, we get a motion to adopt 4.01 to 4.03.
So move back.
Second, Carolyn?
And committee report? No committee. Okay. Any questions on these motions? Roll call?
Mrs. Better,
Yes.
Mrs. Fiore,
Yes.
Mrs. Benson,
Yes.
Mr. Beach,
Well, I'm sorry, I have a question. You can go back.
For that question.
Sure,
I'm
absolutely.
sorry, I just missed it. So the retreat's 1,500, is that something that's reasonable for what she does? No, it kind of struck me as that. That's all. That was my only comment.
That's what we paid, comparable to what we paid last year, may even be less than what we paid last year, but I don't quote me on that because I'm not sure.
She's someone from the state, Julie Wilson?
She's the one who's done strategic planning with us and did the retreat last year. We did it in July last year. We've used her, it's probably the third time in terms of board training retreats.
My apologies.
Okay, any other questions? All right, roll call, please.
Mrs. Better,
Yes.
Mrs. Fiore,
Yes.
Mrs. Benson,
Yes.
Mr. Beach,
Yes.
Mrs. Barbarsky,
Yes.
Mrs. Ryan,
Yes.
Mrs. Wolf,
Yes.
Dr. Sucio,
Yes.
passes.
Okay, moving on to personnel. Can we get a motion to adopt 5.01 to 5.09?
So move back.
Second, Jennifer. Do we have a committee report for that?
We do.
Okay.
The committee met on July 12th, and we discussed staffing updates, professional services discussion regarding the board attorney. We discussed the human capital analytics software, getting a proposal and demo, the preschool expansion, the mention of the sick leave law has passed, the organizational chart for 2023-2024, other personnel matters, and the agenda items of new staff appointments, transfers, and coaching assignments. And we planned our next meeting for Thursday, August 3rd.
Thank you. Any questions regarding?
I just had a question about the board. So got some comments about the board attorney. When is their contract up? Did we just approve a new one?
It's an annual contract that's approved, or it's an annual agreement for professional services that's approved May meeting, June meeting, was recently.
It may have been, was the last meeting.
I would say it was June. Yeah.
I mean, we didn't discuss any of that before we approved it.
No,
Some of the
because-
comments that were made.
No, we didn't discuss it because of approval of the same board council. And this discussion has us discussing perhaps a need for additional counsel.
Any other questions? Can we get a roll call?
Ms. Beverly?
Yes.
Ms. Fiore?
Yes.
Ms. Menzel?
Yes.
Mr. Beach?
Yes.
Ms. Bogowski?
Yes.
Ms. Ryan?
Yes.
Ms. Walker?
Yes.
Dr. Socia?
Yes.
Passes.
Moving on to communication, can I get a motion to adopt 6.01?
So move back.
Second, Jennifer?
Do you have a committee report? No. No committee report, okay. Any questions at this point? If not, can we get a roll call, please?
Ms. Beverly?
Yes.
Ms. Fiore?
Yes.
Ms. Menzel?
Yes.
Mr. Beach?
Yes.
Ms. Bogowski?
Yes.
Ms. Ryan?
Yes.
Ms. Walker?
Yes.
Dr. Socia?
Yes.
Passes.
Okay, moving on to unfinished business. Board member petitions that are due to the county office on Monday, July 31st at 4 p.m. Do we need to discuss that?
Just a reminder, it's usually just put on for everybody that that's the deadline for anybody who's running again or anybody from the public who wishes to file.
Any questions? All right, moving on to new business from the board. There's the NJSBA convention, which is in October. Any discussion regarding that? Anyone interested in attending? Is that what it is?
So what Jason will do, if he hasn't done already, will do a group rate registration for the convention. So if anybody is interested in going, those of you who have gone before can talk about the value of the classes that you've attended in the past. I think they extended it this year. I want to say it's Monday through Thursday this year. It seems like a longer conference, but you can opt to go for a portion of it. You can stay overnight. You can drive down for a day and come home. So you don't have to stay for the whole conference. But Jason will take care of registration. I think the most important thing for board members to know is if you have interest in going in any way, whether it's for a day, an overnight, a portion of the conference, email Jason, let him know what interest you have. Go on the website and look at the dates. They've sent out a call for proposals, but they don't have the agenda yet posted. So you might want to indicate your interest to Jason first and then decide what day or days you may or may not go once the agenda is posted, because there might be something that really appeals to you as a board member. But don't worry, Jason will take care of registration. I'll let him talk more details, but let him know your interest.
No, just that I book a hotel if you need it, and I can cancel it up to a certain date, so I'd reach out again. So it's better to secure the hotel because hotels book out. And if you have interest, then I would make sure that you are secured for your stay if you plan on staying overnight. And then I can always cancel before the deadline. There's no cost to the district.
Where is it located?
Atlantic City.
That's it.
It's the last week of October, 24th, 23rd, 24th.
I have the website up. It's October 23rd to 26th at the Atlantic City Convention Center. And also, I don't know if you wanted to mention, Dr. Hart, we have several proposals from staff members and from you and I as well that we might be presenting at the workshop as well.
Yeah, I'll just expand that. We have one proposal that we collaborated on, Jody and I collaborated. Remember at the last board meeting, we talked about perhaps doing a proposal from the board in terms of some of the green initiatives that we've done. So we worked on that. The teachers that received the TCNJ grant, I think they were item 4.03. That group of teachers also submitted a proposal to talk about some of the inquiry work that we've been doing here in district. So they will hopefully have an opportunity to present at the conference as well. There may be others out there that I just don't recall, but I know it's either a group of or several presentations from those inquiry teachers as well. So if you'd like to come and support, even if it's for that day, just to see our teachers present, or Jody or I, you can.
Thank you.
Hotel rooms, the other thing is Jason generally books rooms at Harrods, I want to say. But if there's a specific hotel room that you'd like to request, work with Jason if you have a preference in staying in one place or another. So the two key things are express interest to Jason, hotel night stay, as well as a preference of hotel if it's not Harrah's. And he'll work with you on the cost differential.
Thank you. We are now open to the public for anything on or off the agenda. No? Anything online?
Nothing in the chat.
Okay. All right, so at this point, we would go, is there a motion to move to executive session? I would read this now. We resolve to adjourn to executive session in accordance with the Sunshine Law to discuss a legal matter for approximately 30 minutes, at which time the board expects to return to public session where no action will be taken. The matters discussed will be made public if and when the circumstances requiring confidentiality no longer exist. However, it is not presently known when such circumstances will exist. Can I get a motion?
So move that. Second, Carolyn?
Roll call, please.
Ms. Beverly?
Yes.
Ms. Fiore?
Yes.
Ms. Menzer?
Yes.
Mr. Beach?
Yes.
Ms. Byworski?
Yes.
Ms. Ryan?
Yes.
Ms. Wolf?
Yes.
Dr. Sosio?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you, Stacy.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.